welcome to Coding with Jesse. I'm Jesse Skinner and I'm working through a React.js demo. In this episode I'm going to add some functionality so that in this question I have on this form that the police specify with a text box that's only going to appear when the other option is selected. So what I want to be able to do is say if I clicked television, that this is going to disappear, and it's not going to be there at the start until someone actually clicks other. So how can I do that? So I'm going to switch over. I'm going to go to my radio other option, which is where that other is located, and I need to use some state. So what is state? We've talked about properties. State is sort of like internal properties that can change depending on what the user does, if the user clicks something, and that's something where we want to pay attention to. So we have this radio input, and basically when it changes, I want to either show or hide the second label depending on whether that input is selected. So I'm going to add a special React onChange event, and I'm going to have it call a method on my component that I haven't made yet. It'll be this dot, let's call it onChange. So I'm going to call it just that. It can actually be called anything, but I think that name's appropriate. And it's going to receive an event, and there's going to be an event.target property, which is going to reference this input. So what I can do basically is say input equals event.target, and then I'm going to check if input is selected. So I'm going to say if input dot selected, checked rather, then I'm going to, here, let's do this a different way. I want to change my state to true or false depending if this is checked. So what I can do is say this dot set state, which is the method you call to change the state of a component. I'm going to pass it in an object, and I'm going to say checked set to input.checked. Get rid of that. There. So okay, whenever this input changes, it's going to call this function. It's going to look at the radio input, and it's going to update the state with checked, either true or false, depending on if the radio is checked. And then what I'm going to do inside my render function is decide whether or not to render this label, only render it if state.checked is true. So in the last video I did something similar with props. This time I'm going to look for this .state.checked and use the double and sign, and then I'm going to wrap this in parentheses so I can have it on the next line, and close the parentheses and then close the curly braces. So there are different ways to write this. This might not be clear to you, so you might want to split it up somehow or use just a different way of writing it. But this is the way I like to write it. So I'm checking this .state.checked. If it's true, then this second label is going to get rendered. So let's save that and see if it actually works. I'm going to refresh. Oh, now my other option isn't there at all. Oh, maybe it's because what I changed in the last. Yeah, I have other set to false, so let me turn on the other option. Refresh. Now it's broken. So if I go into the console, it says cannot read property checked of null. Alright, so I made some guesses there of how this was going to work. I'm using event.target, but obviously that's not working. So I'm going to use console.log to see what's actually happening. I'm going to log the event, and I'll log input. I think input's going to be null. That's what it suggested. So if I refresh, it still says cannot read property checked of null. Oh, okay. So it's not here that it's complaining about it. It's actually here that it's complaining about it. this.state.checked. I'm just guessing, but if I can see here it's line 19, and if I click that, yeah, it's actually referring to this.state.checked. So how come this.state is null? Well, I haven't set state. So when this component first renders, there is no state. So there's something I can do to fix that, and that is by setting a getInitialState method. And what that's going to do is return the state that should be in effect when the thing first loads. And that is going to be checked false because the radio input is not checked to begin with. So if I save that and refresh, that should do the trick. I can close this. Refresh, and there other is not checked, and look, the input is hidden. So if I choose these other options, nothing happens. If I choose other, this appears. That's great. And if I switch back to a different option, it's actually not disappearing. So my onChange event isn't really helpful because it's not unselecting this option. Okay, so in the next episode, I'm going to work on getting that to work, and I need to do some heavy lifting and introduce some new features to make that work. So hope you stay tuned, and thanks for watching.